Hi everybody, Nathan here from Save Your Game, and welcome back to the INstagamers Network. Today we're talking about Holy Grail games. Now you hear that phrase, and you might ask yourself, a grail? In your best Tim the Enchanter voice. I would answer in a subconscious Tim the Enchanter voice, yes! A Holy Grail game is a game that we have admired from afar for a really long time and we can't quite get our hands on. Or maybe it's a game that's just too expensive for us to justify buying it. It could even be a game that we have been able to get, and because it was so hard to get our hands on, or it's so big and epic, it's the crown jewel of our collection. So sit back, relax, and enjoy what our contributors have to say about their Holy Grail games.
Hi, my name's Dave Adams, and you might know me as Nerd of Wisdom on Instagram. It's one hell of a story when you spend your life trying to get your hands on the Holy Grail. And look, I guess games remain Holy Grail games because they're yet to be uncovered. The games that I tend to really chase, or at least chase of late, isn't necessarily the newest and the latest game. A lot of the times I chase games because they're from a particular designer and I want to try and understand how that designer thinks and works, or they're games which had a particular impact on the industry or the hobby, and I want to understand what that impact was or what trend they set or how they functioned as a game so that I can understand them a little bit better. Topping that list is anything by the designer of Wolfgang Kramer. Now, anyone who's won the Spiel des Jahres as many times as him and created as many brilliant games as him is worthy of being on such a list. In that list has to be the Mask trilogy, of which I have managed to get the game Tikal. But also on that list includes Mexica and Java. Now, Mexica was recently re-released, and I've looked around, and to buy a copy of Java is going to cost me anywhere up to $170, which is kind of keeping it out of my price range for the moment. Java is the one out of all of the Mask trilogy that people tell me is the best and perhaps the most enjoyable. And I really want to play it and understand it, and I would love a copy so much. Reprint it! Hurry up and reprint it! I want that game! In the meantime, I will save up and get a copy of Mexica at some point, I'm sure. But Java, come on, Java! My name's Dave Adams. I'll see you next time.
Hey everyone, it's Angela here, and this week on the INstagamers Network, we're talking about Grail games. Those games that we really want, but they're out of our grasp for whatever reason. My Grail game is expensive. You can get it, but it's too rich for me. That game is Takenoko Collector's Edition, a giant version of the regular game. Now, I have the regular game of Takenoko and I love it, so it's my dream to own the Collector's Edition. The only real difference is the size and the price. The Collector's Edition features huge pieces and tiles and comes in a giant wooden box. I saw it when I was in the US, and price-wise it was $400 USD. That's around $525 Australian, which is highway robbery. Yeah, that was Ned Kelly, because Australia. So giant pandas are where it's at for me when it comes to my Grail game, even if they're expensive jerks. Can pandas be jerks? What's your Grail game? Let us know in the comments and tell us why you haven't managed to get yours. Yeah, pandas are jerks, but I'm still hoping to one day own Takenoko Collector's Edition.
Hello everyone, my name is Annette, and you may know me as Netters Plays, and today I'm going to talk to you about my Grail game. Now, if you're not familiar, a Grail game is a game that you pretty much really want, but it's really hard to find because it's either out of print or when you do find it, it's gonna be expensive. So throughout time, my collection has grown and I've managed to acquire a few of my Grail games. One being this game called Macau, which is a game by my favorite designer, Stefan Feld. It's a pretty hard find, but I managed to find it at a fairly good price in an auction. Another game that I also managed to pick up, which was a Grail game, was Gigapolis. Now, Gigapolis I picked up through the marketplace in Europe. So I had to pay for not only the game, but I also had to pay a pretty big price on shipping as well. But it was a Grail game, so I managed to get that one. Another Grail game that I also have is this game called Iki. Now, Iki I managed to find at an auction, and it was in shrink wrapped, and I was waiting very patiently for this game, and I finally found a fair price for it. I still had to pay quite a bit for it, but it was well worth it. Now, the one Grail game that I haven't managed to acquire is this game called Glory to Rome in the black box. And that game I've searched high and low, and every time I look for it, I find it, and it's gonna be well over $100. And I'm just not sure if I'm ready to pay over $100 for a deck of cards, because that's pretty much what it is. It's a game all about multi-use cards and using them in several different ways. And from what I heard, it's supposed to be a game that's very elegant, it's very refined, and the way that it functions is really just elegant. So I definitely want to pick up this game because I've also liked other games by Carl Chudik, just like Matai and I, and all his other games too. However, Glory to Rome still manages to be my holy grail, so I'm still waiting around, and if you happen to see one, just call it to my attention because I really need to get my hands on that. So, yep, thanks for watching, and let me know what your favorite Grail game is, or what you've been looking for and you haven't really found, or if you have, was it really worth it? So thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!
Hey, what's up, fellow board game bandits? It's your friend, the Board Game Renegade here. Today we're talking about Grail games. Now, there are a lot of games that I would consider Grail games that I would like to get, but can't get. They are hard to find, or out of print, or just way too expensive. All of those games are considered, to me, Grail games because I don't own them and really want to, but for whatever reason, I haven't been able to acquire it. Usually people consider Grail games are the games that are very, very difficult to get. I include games that are very, very expensive as well because I just cannot afford it, or it is hard for me to just throw down a lot of money for a specific game. Recently, my Grail game was actually a Grail expansion, and that was the Memoir 44 Air Pack because it's been out of print for a very long time, and it is available on eBay and things like that, but for an incredibly expensive amount. Usually around $150 to $200 for an expansion. Fortunately, I posted that I wanted that game or that expansion, and someone gave it to me. One of my awesome Instagram followers told me that he had the game and he was willing to part with it. And at first we were talking about a trade, but then he changed his mind and he just gave it to me for free, and that is amazing. And you know who you are, and thank you very much. You made me very happy. So now, to make this video, I had to think about another Grail game. And once again, the Grail game is not a full game. My Grail game is the Conan game that was just released, or last year released, was it last year or early this year? Anyway, the recent Conan game from Monolith Games is my Grail game. Now, the game is available at stores and I could purchase it. However, the Grail does not just include the game. My Grail, or my dream of owning the Conan game, is to have the Conan game with all of the Kickstarter exclusives and expansions released already for it. I totally regret not backing this on Kickstarter, and I want to have everything. I want to own that game and own everything. So that is my Grail game. Now, I haven't even played the game yet, and I want to, but I am holding off in hopes that I could find a great deal on everything. Or who knows, maybe it'll just show up at my door. I don't know, I'm just waiting for a miracle. But Conan with the Kickstarter exclusives and the expansions is my current Grail game. Anyway, folks, why don't you please place in the comments what your Grail game is so that we could read it and get back to you. Anyway, folks, like I said, I'm the Board Game Renegade, and until next time, peace out.
When I was a kid and my family got a computer for the first time, a friend of mine let me borrow Age of Empires. This was a real-time strategy computer game that allowed you to build a civilization from basically nothing and then use the power you gained to take over the rest of the map and win. I've spent hours playing Age of Empires and still revisit it to this day. It's one of my favorite computer games of all time. Now, I love the idea of a board game, that allows you to have that same feeling, starting from nothing and then spending your time and resources at building a more and more powerful empire until you're able to take over territory. Knowing this and feeling huge amounts of nostalgia every time I see a huge map on a board, I knew I had to give Scythe a chance. And turns out it's one of my favorite tabletop experiences. Scythe is a 4X area control and engine building game designed by Jamie Stegmaier and published by Stonemaier Games. It is set in an alternate history 1920s Europe where war has raged and has been settled now that mankind has developed large mechs to aid in its efforts. Now that the dust has settled, however, the stage is set for someone to take control of Eastern Europe. They do so by building wealth as they develop the war-torn region. At first glance, Scythe looks like a typical war game with minis and a huge map, but there is quite a bit of character in it. Each player is going to take the role of a leader of a faction. Each faction is going to have its own special power, resources, and starting position. You begin Scythe in your own small corner of the world, and it's up to you to take it from there and harness the technology at your disposal and expand your reach. As the game starts, you begin to see the genius in Scythe's design. Your choices on your turn are numerous. There's a large tech tree that you can utilize. You choose an action slot, and then you can perform the top, and bottom, or neither of these actions. Now I know what you're thinking. A game with so many options sounds overwhelming. It doesn't really sound that fun. And you may be right, but as you play Scythe, you'll begin to see how quickly these turns actually go. Here's the tech tree again. You simply pay the cost if necessary. Over here you don't have to pay, you just choose the action and it happens. And you follow the tree down and then you get the rewards. The rules even state that if you're performing one of these bottom row actions, as you decide which one you want to do or what you want to do, you can pass the turn. That way play continues to move. Another thing that I love about Scythe is its emphasis on agriculture and development. You may see a game with detailed war machine miniatures and think that you'll be tearing into other players the entire game. That's not the case though. In fact, you can play a game of Scythe without ever entering combat. It's more unlikely as you add players to the player count, but it is possible. If you enter a space with another player's miniature or mechs, you have to enter combat. Once you do, you see another instance of Scythe's elegant and simple design. Players secretly bid power on these power dials that they have on their power track. You reveal the bid, adding any combat cards you want to spin, and the highest bid wins. Jamie Stegmaier, the game's designer, has said that the name of Scythe has a double meaning. A scythe is a farming tool that typically has one purpose, which is being used during harvest. When the time comes, however, and push comes to shove, it can be used in war. I think that sums up Scythe's combat perfectly. It's the threat of combat that will drive you, and not combat itself. The art and world building of the game is credited to Jacob Brzezalski. It has to be my favorite thing about Scythe. I remember seeing some of Jacob's work before ever hearing about the game. His involvement with Scythe only added to my excitement upon hearing about it. There's some absurdity in it. The power of industrialization and disarmament now thrust into the world of agriculture. It's a melancholy mix of desperation and terrifying power. It's arresting and emotive, and it's everywhere in Scythe's design. It's a joy to behold as you fight for the control of the map. The last thing I want to mention is how much I appreciate the subtle humor in this game. Now, upon first looking at Scythe, you probably wouldn't think of it as a game that works in jokes, but it actually does. And that's a common theme here in Scythe. There's a lot more than meets the eye. Here are the encounter cards. Encounters are triggered when your player miniature enters a space with these icons. Okay, here are a couple encounter cards from Scythe. You see a snowy hillside with some horses and warriors and a mech. Here are the options you can choose when you come across this encounter. You could humbly take orders from your superior officer. Okay, pretty safe. You could give the villager a ride home on your horse. That's nice. Or you could threaten to create an avalanche with your bazooka. I kind of want to do that one. Here's another. You've got a pasture with some cows and a mech. You could distract the rogue mech with your yodeling skills to save the cow. Seize control of the mech and scuttle into the forest. Or you could just steer the cow under the mech to see what happens. Next time I'm playing, I'm just doing nothing but encounters. Now, as you can imagine, I just really love this game. It's a game that I'm so proud to have on my shelf and have played a ton of times already, and I'm sure will continue to play. If it looks interesting to you, I hope you'll check out Scythe. It's just really a great all-in-one package. That's it for me today. See you next time.
A Grail?